everybody. Welcome to another edition of Another Fine Mess. I'm Roger Gray along with Mike Vance. How are you?
Dandy. I'm having raccoon trouble, Roger.
Are you?
Yep.
That's right. You have a nice place in the country.
Yep. And I keep buying new things to raccoon proof. And he finally broke one of my bird feeders last night. So,
Yeah.
anyway, what
You,
can I tell you?
I've lived in the country. You can't stop the raccoons. Can't stop the squirrels. It's darn near impossible to stop deer. They came and ate out of our bird feeder pretty much regularly. So.
Yeah, well, the deer are eating our roses around the front, so we don't have to worry about them and the bird feeders. And the squirrels
Okay.
don't eat that much, but the raccoon,
All right.
he and I, it's on.
And already, once you get Hexeth involved, and we're already launched into stuff that I'm sure everybody cares about. Let's start with something that's making national news just in the last day or so. To set the stage for this, Saudi Arabia, the 9/11 hijackers, all Saudis.
Or
The
9/11.
funding was Saudi. Of course we have the murder by the current leader of Saudi Arabia, Mohammed bin Salman, or Bonesaw, if you prefer, killing Jamal Khashoggi, Washington Post reporter, Saudi exile, critic of the regime, etc. That happened in Istanbul, in the Saudi embassy, for crying out loud.
Yep.
That was just 2018. Now, the president has announced we're doing a deal. We're going to help them get nuclear enrichment facilities constructed and up and operating. This in a country that has more natural energy resources than probably any other. And we're going to do it. And American companies are involved. No doubt there will be American kickbacks. I would love to see what the investments look like in some of the companies that do this sort of thing. Does this make any sense at all? We're in the middle of a war, a preposterous war over a Middle Eastern country getting a nuke.
Yep. So let's give a nuke to another Mideastern country.
One that has not proven themselves entirely trustworthy.
Well, I mean, proven themselves largely untrustworthy and funded the biggest attack that we've had on the United States in, I don't know, my lifetime.
Since Pearl Harbor, probably, yeah. Yeah,
So-
and about the same death toll, actually. 2,000, 2,200, something like that, roughly equivalent to the death toll at Pearl Harbor. I always found that a little ironic. But so we're going to help them get a nuke. You think maybe Kushner might have been involved in that? Perhaps.
Well, I'm sure that he's making a ton of money off of it. Mm-hmm. So
For those that don't, go ahead.
just disgusting. I mean, they don't care about anything but cash. Anything. So
And for those that have forgotten, in the first Trump administration, Jared Kushner, his son-in-law, had a position as an official White House advisor, presidential advisor. It was kind of a general title. But he negotiated, I guess to their credit, something called the Abraham Accords. That's what they named it. It didn't make for peace. It simply normalized relations, hopefully down the road, between some Middle Eastern countries, relatively moderate, I guess you would say, with Israel. Okay, fine. But when the administration was done, when Trump left office, Kushner got, a $2 billion infusion into a brokerage fund he had put together from the Saudi royal treasury.
yep.
So, yeah, that's in everyday parlance, that's called buying influence.
Yeah. Bribery. Yep. So
Yeah.
anyway, what other
Speaking
happy
of
news,
which,
what other happy news
Go ahead.
do we have?
well, speaking of which, let's take it down here to Texas and explain this business with Texas Tech and Ken Paxton,
Yeah,
the
sure.
Republican nominee for the U.S. Senate.
I had alluded to this a few weeks ago when it happened, but more details are coming out. So there's this guy, big dude, named Cody Campbell, who is a right-wing West Texas guy, Texas Tech grad, and the chair of the Board of Regents at Texas Tech. And he was the one that had all the bluster that yes, so what if our quarterback recruit that we just signed had bet on his own team at Indiana? So what? It doesn't matter. He was up in the ante. Well, he gave, and we knew this part, $274 million to Ken Paxton. Comes out that apparently other regents at Texas Tech and other big boosters at Texas Tech had given another $500 million. And they had donated all of this money. They then, the next day...
And we should say this is from them, not from the school itself.
Correct.
Obviously.
This is from them,
Yeah.
although they run the school. They're the rich guys that were appointed by the Texas governor to run the school. The next day, Ken Paxton comes out and says, I will sue the Big 12 if you try to sanction Texas Tech over having an ineligible player who bet on his own team, and placed well into thousands of bets as a college student. So the next day, so, I mean, it's probably just a coincidence, the fact that they had given hundreds of millions of dollars, and the next day, the sitting Attorney General of Texas threatens to sue the Big 12 on behalf of Texas Tech.
And by the way, the betting thing is a pretty hard and fast NCAA rule.
It is in any sport.
You can't do that. You're out.
You do not bet on your own team. That kept Pete Rose from consideration from the Hall of Fame for his entire life. Because of that, and he had agreed to that. But there's more on Paxton. There's more. $1.6 million in real estate that he can't really explain. He makes $150,000 a year, and bought $1.6 million in real estate. So he's been asked about it. Another $9 million. Is the new number?
Yeah, his real estate holdings are worth $9 million, I think, total.
Total, yeah.
And he just bought a bunch of condos, one of which is occupied by his current mistress, because she's not divorced yet, and he's not divorced yet.
Correct. And at some point, he used her address for his address on some kind of campaign form that he filled out. But yeah, there was a new $1.6 million is the new buy. He owns $9 million in real estate. On $150,000 salary a year.
To be fair, fair. He was an attorney before he entered politics, but he was a relatively young attorney. I mean, because he was in the legislature and all that. Relatively young attorney and not making this kind of money. Not early on.
Yeah, just as crooked as can possibly be. Last week we talked about Graham Plattner in Maine and how he had to leave the Maine Senate nomination. Well, it alluded to the fact that on the Republican side, such things as, sexual assault weren't necessarily disqualifying. And just to back us up, Arizona had their primaries yesterday, and a guy named Mark Lamb, who is backed by the president, was a former sheriff, and he got nominated, the Republican nomination, in a district that is, by all accounts, a very red district, so he will probably win. He had sexually harassed, the allegations by the Arizona Republic newspaper, half a dozen women, and at least one of them, when he was sheriff, he threatened her and said, I will send my deputies over to arrest you or worse if you don't shut up about this. He is the new nominee on the Republican side. So
we've gotten to a point that it really, if it's your guy or gal, it really doesn't matter what they've done because they're yours. You accept them, warts and all.
No, that's just not true. I disagree with that entirely. Al Franken would disagree with that entirely. The Democrats, Graham Plattner would disagree with that entirely. The Democrats have been good, and in some cases, I think maybe too strong and too quick to react and brand somebody as unacceptable. So no, it's night and day between the parties. The days of, we used to talk about the big graft on one side, and then the fact that people like Don Rostenkowski get tossed out of Congress because he used illegal postage while he was a representative from Illinois, and it's just kind of quaint. But now we have replaced that with all these sexual harassment and sexual assault allegations, and one team that's perfectly okay. That's boys being boys.
Well, and just to get back to the Texas race, and maybe this backs up what you're saying. James Talerico, the Democratic candidate in the Senate race here in Texas, had a big meeting in Houston with a group of black voters who were his primary race was against Jasmine Crockett.
Right.
It got a little. I don't recall it getting nasty. It got a little rough, I guess. Fill me in if I'm missing something. At least as far as how.
It didn't. I agree with you. It didn't really get nasty, but there was. Jasmine Crockett won heavily in Dallas and Houston, and she won heavily with a black turnout in Dallas and Houston.
Right.
Talerico won everywhere else in the state of Texas. So the thought process among Democrats is that he needs to repair any sort of possible splits with black voters, and he has been trying to do this extra outreach, and that was the meeting in Houston. And apparently one woman in particular confronted him. I think it is unfortunate, and this is more of a Democratic problem than a Republican problem. It is unfortunate that people tend to look only at, well, you're a black candidate, so therefore I am voting for you. And I am not saying Jasmine Crockett is unqualified to hold any office. I'm not saying that at all.
Sharp
but
woman,
there are cases where that has happened. And where you see it a lot is in things like judges' races, where people do not even look at issues. Even regular voters do not look at all who's the better candidate. Sometimes, I'll admit, I check the Bar Association ratings, and sometimes I don't. But in this past Democratic primary in Texas, anybody who has a female first name won their primary because the Democratic voters had come in with this blanket, women are going to do a better job than men. And there are a couple of them that was a problem. We'll see how the general election shakes out. But that kind of knee-jerk reaction in favor of some group, there's no difference than voting against somebody because they're black, or voting against somebody because they are a woman, or voting against somebody because they're Latino. It works both ways. You need to know who the candidate is.
Well, let me also, and I guess I'm reversing myself on what I said earlier, because I think this is particularly a Democratic problem, although we'll see it occasionally. People like McCain, for example. There were people that just didn't like John McCain. And for what reason, I can't fathom. Pretty admirable guy overall. Very admirable, as a matter of fact. But there is a tendency. There are Democrats who would rather, if you're not pure, if you don't check off every box on the Democratic wish list, I can't go for you. The Bernie Bros last go around presidentially. Really? Well, if it isn't Bernie, then I'm not going to vote for a Democrat. Okay, you're going to get a Republican. That's how that kind of works. And the voters that, well, Jasmine didn't win, and I just don't know about this guy. Okay, stay home, and you'll get Paxton. That's how it's going to work.
Yeah. In 2016,
which gets back.
I was just going to say, to back you up, in 2016, one of my longtime friends in comedy, very, very talented guy, unfriended me on Facebook and has not refriended me on Facebook because I backed Elizabeth Warren in the primary and he was backing Bernie. And he called me a complete traitor and unfriended me. I'm done with you. So,
Well, Mike,
yes,
I mean,
it
for
gets
goodness
silly.
sakes, that's a kamikaze mission, Mike. I mean, Elizabeth. I mean, I like Elizabeth Warren, but anyway, getting back to what I was saying, we had a discussion a couple of shows ago about the inability to compromise these days, the inability to accept half a loaf. You're not getting the perfect candidate, but you're getting a candidate that's better than the other guy, and that's we. I am astonished that people can't see that. That no matter how much you're not on board with Talerico in this case, otherwise you're going to get Paxton. If you weren't on board with McCain, you're going to get somebody even less acceptable. It's just I don't know. It's a strange phenomenon now, but particularly Democrats would rather go down. They'd rather the ship sink with flags flying than accept any compromise.
Well, I think there is more of that on the Republican side than you think, pushing people
Well,
to the right, pushing the party to the right. But the country was built on compromise
oh yeah,
from the Constitutional Convention. The country was built on compromise, and the best politician we have ever had in the White House ever was LBJ, and LBJ his entire career was based on compromise, taking what you can get, and a little intimidation. People forget that LBJ, when he was Senate Majority Leader, passed a Civil Rights Act in 1957, and it didn't do much, but it laid the groundwork for 1964. It put it out there. We are passing a federal Civil Rights Act, and Eisenhower signed it. So that's something that is thinking ahead, that is compromising, that is taking the small things you can get and looking down the road, and that has disappeared from certainly one side of the aisle, and sadly from
yeah.
all the citizenry as well.
Well, I know what the anger about McCain was when he voted against getting rid of Obamacare. But using LBJ, it's an excellent example, and I can't recall what biography. I interviewed the author. Was it Lone Star Rising or one of the others?
Well,
But
we interviewed a few, but you and I also had Robert Cairo on twice when we were doing radio.
was he? Was it in his book where LBJ, one of the most effective and influential black organizations back then, was actually the Pullman Porter Union. There were a lot of black leaders that came out of the union movement, and when LBJ was a young congressman, he got together with them and he said, "Look, to get the influence I need to help you, I'm going to have to associate with a lot of people you don't like, and bear with me because ultimately I'll get what you need." And he did it. Yeah, he had to hang out with Strom Thurmond and all those guys, but he ultimately got it done. That's pragmatism. And by and large, influential black leaders stuck with him.
Yep.
And he did get it done. So, I mean, it isn't perfect, and Lord knows they're trying to gut it, but that's how politics used to be. Yeah, you can call it log rolling, you can call it you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours, etc. But you do what you have to do to get what you want, and you may
With an
have
end goal.
to
The guy that you're
swallow
talking
some
about,
compromises.
yeah, the guy you're talking about is A. Philip Randolph,
Philip
who was
Randolph, yep.
the head of the Pullman Porters Union for a long time, and went up against the NAACP in several cases back in the 40s and 50s because he thought the NAACP was compromising too much. But you are correct that he was a advocate of Johnson, even back to his Senate days, because
Yeah.
he knew that he could work with Johnson, and he knew that Johnson had pure motives on what he was trying to do,
Yeah.
even while it might have looked the other way at some points.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And we didn't want to make this a whole big thing about Johnson, and a very imperfect man in many ways, but aren't we all? And a man of his time when it comes to race. But he got beyond that and did what needed doing. It had been needed. It was needed to be done for years. Yeah.
I will argue and last word on LBJ. I will argue as a historian that LBJ is the most liberal president we have ever had, and I would put Harry Truman second. Both of them more so than FDR. Hey, I want to talk about health care.
Yeah.
Excuse me. That was not on cue that I'm, saying health care and then I
Healthcare.
turned
Yeah.
my
I know.
off.
Tubercular ward here. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. So this whole explosive diarrhea thing that the nation has been fixated on, that is the largest
Two words
outbreak.
you never want to hear side by side. Yeah.
That is correct. I don't want to hear either word even separated from one another, let alone
separated, yeah.
together. But cyclospora, this parasite that has been going around, I want to talk about why it is the worst outbreak we have ever had. And it goes back to something that I've been railing about for a few weeks now on here, and that is those stupid cuts that Elon came in and did, and that the government is still, this administration is still trying to do. Health departments, state and local health departments, which are the groups that actually administer these programs, got only 40% of their normal funding for 2026. So in other words, 60% of their funding went away. They only got 40%, state and local across the country. FoodNet. FoodNet is a program that was supposed to be part of our food safety network. And they were monitoring 8 different parasites. They cut it, so they are now only monitoring 2. So Salmonella and E. coli made the cut. Listeria
Good.
did not. Listeria was what got Bluebell ice cream in trouble.
Trouble. Yep.
Just one thing. Vibrio, another one, did not make the cut, no longer being monitored by FoodNet. And, who knew, Cyclospora did not make the cut. It was being monitored as a parasite. It is gone. A woman that was one of the lead scientists for FoodNet, this is a quote, "We are gutting one of the cornerstones of food safety," end quote. So they also delayed, there was another program passed under Biden, and it was supposed to, it's called a traceability rule, that was supposed to greatly improve our ability to track where these outbreaks were coming from and be able to deal with them. That was supposed to roll out last year. They delayed it for the entirety of the Trump
Until 28.
second term,
Yeah.
till 28, July of 28.
Yeah.
So that went away. So the ability to track things, the ability to treat things, they've eliminated those, and then you wonder why we are getting explosive diarrhea. This is the administration that will give you explosive diarrhea, Roger. There is a direct
And
line.
let me clarify. Mike and I are not suffering from that yet. I just when we say we get.
Well, I'm having water just in case there's any sort of dehydration.
I'm having coffee. So, well, and yeah, if you like the price of beef, and obviously nobody does, thank the New World Screwworm, among other things, because that was another monitoring program that didn't make the cut.
Yep. And I will say again,
and now Texas ranchers are having to deal with the aftermath of that.
yeah, and I live among ranchers. We do not own cattle ourselves, but our neighbors do. And, beef prices are at the highest in memory. The last time, it's because that there are fewer cattle. The last time that there have been this low number of cattle in the United States was 1961, which was the tail end of a big drought where everybody was having to sell off their stock. A multi-year drought that was going on in ranch country across the American West. And you would think they would be happy because beef prices are at that all-time high. But now they have to deal with screwworm, and a big part of that is based on cuts in monitoring the screwworm.
And that means a lot of people may switch to chicken and fish and whatever, which is good for you. And that, don't get me wrong, but and as long as we can keep bird flu away. But ultimately, it may well, consumer choices may well also hurt their business. Yeah.
Yep. So there's
Anyway,
some good news.
they're just going to have to up their testosterone levels to deal with that. Which brings us to the Secretary of Defense or War, whatever the hell they're calling themselves these days, Pete Hegseth, who's going to check out the T levels of people, men and women, in the military.
Yep. So
What?
weren't they concerned about they wanted all women to be very feminine, but now they want to make sure that they also have high testosterone levels? Is that the...
Yeah, I'm not. But, which is, by the way, some people, I think this may be a little conspiratorial, think this is part of a way to downgrade the importance of women in the military. Well, their T levels are just too low. Yeah.
I don't think that is conspiratorial, unreasonably conspiratorial at all. Because, I mean, look at the promotions. We talked last week about the fact that he removed all the women from the Navy, U.S. Navy promotions list, and for the first time in a decade, more than a decade, there are no female admirals.
And black officers, yeah.
Yeah. So, no, that's not unreasonable at all. They have been fairly transparent about what they're trying to do. They are saying that if you are a person of color or female, that you're only there because of some sort of bizarre woke theory, which none of them can describe what that means at all. They want everything to be run by white men, period.
Well, DEI is the new euphemism for affirmative action. And the presumption is if you're a Colin Powell, if you're a Chappie James, if you're any minority or woman who has risen in the ranks, that happened because of favoritism.
Yep.
Because you obviously were chosen over a more qualified white officer or male officer, which is, how insulting is that really?
Well, we never had favoritism before. There was no good old boys network before. So, I mean, obviously, Roger.
That wouldn't have happened.
Yeah.
And I have to say, no, I think correct me. Somebody will correct me if I'm wrong here, but I think it was Norman Schwarzkopf who said, "Look, without women in the military, we're going to be crippled. They fill jobs that have to be filled. It's almost like war production during World War II. The women stepped up and filled those jobs because the men all got drafted. And now they're volunteering and they're filling the jobs that the military absolutely needs. Whether or not you think they belong in hand-to-hand combat, okay, that's a different discussion. But if you're talking about what the military needs up and down the food chain, you have to have women in the service. You just do.
Well, but there are also very, very skilled women aviators, and
of course, yeah. That doesn't
I mean,
require a lot of upper body strength. Yeah.
they are filling every role, every role. And
You don't have to be a weightlifter to command a submarine. Yeah.
But women are allowed to try out for things like the Army Rangers and the Navy SEALs. That requires a standard physical test that you have to pass.
Mm-hmm.
But you bet your ass that Hegseth and all of these misogynists would love to get rid of that rule. So I don't think they're open about it. They're open about what their goals are. So I don't think that's a conspiracy at all.
Hegseth, by the way, we should remind everybody while we're discussing testosterone, is the first defense secretary to fashion a makeup room next to his office. Because, military grade makeup for TV appearances. That's
Well, his boss wears that.
there you are.
Although he can't really see back here. Years ago, I did, as a little aside, we did a show at a senior retirement community home. And it's the first time I had ever noticed a woman who had very carefully put on her makeup, but it kind of stopped before her ears. It came around here
Yeah.
because that's what she could see in the mirror. We now have a president that does that. There are innumerable pictures where his makeup line, his orangeness stops right here.
Before the ears.
Yeah.
Right before the ears. I will tell you, as an aside, when I moved from radio to TV, and I went to work every day and put on makeup to do my job. But it was explained to me by one of the female anchors, actually. Don't forget to do it up into your hairline. Don't forget to do this. Don't forget to do under here because that will look a little weird. It'll look white versus, tan. And do your hands. Because if you sit there and go like this, and you got this lily white hand against this tan face, it looks dumb. And people say, gee. So, yeah, a freshman TV anchor knew that much. So.
Yeah, I was lucky enough, and we're now spending time on TV makeup, but I was lucky enough to be born with dark skin, and usually just powder would do the trick for me. I usually didn't have to do anything else. But there's more information that everybody probably didn't.
When all this used to be black, including these, I never had to worry about my eyes because I never had to mess with that.
For those listening on audio, Roger just motioned to his hair.
White hair and white eyebrows. What can I tell you?
He was talking about his hair. The eyebrows, I think you got at Andy Rooney's estate sale, if I understand.
Hello. By the way, speaking of testosterone, the Iran war has kicked back into gear.
Yes,
and gas is now up nationwide, up over $4 a gallon. Thank you, guys. Appreciate it. And no end in sight. And nobody can. Hegseth was testifying the other day. General Kane was testifying, chairman of the Joint Chiefs, and they couldn't tell us. How's this thing going to wrap up? Where are we going with this? Are we going to use ground troops? Nobody can tell us.
They have a boss who is out of his mind. Okay, let's start with that. And the guy, we're talking about Hirochito here, the guy just several days this week, again, said, no, we're not going to negotiate. That's past. We're going to have war for a while. And that's the best guess, is that this will be an off and on thing for years. The Houthis, which is the proxy group, the Iranian proxy group in Yemen, have now started attacking people. The Blowfish probably are on the sideline coming out at the moment. But, they're
I was wondering why you pronounced it Houthi instead of Houthi, yeah.
They are...
it works for the joke, yeah.
Yeah. All of these groups, Hamas, Hezbollah, that are backed by Iran. So let's ramp all those back up as well, which means, thank God we have those direct flights to Lebanon now because, we can get back over there with Hezbollah. The reason we have not for 41 years had direct flights to Lebanon, by the way, which was reversed by Trump this week. The reason we didn't have them is because they blew up a U.S. plane in 1985, Hezbollah being the they, and, blew up how many hundred Marines under Reagan?
Yeah.
In Beirut.
Right.
So
the Beirut barracks bombing, yeah.
Yeah, so they were killing
84.
Americans by the hundreds, and Reagan finally shut down all direct flights to Lebanon. But the Lebanese president came over, kissed a little Trump ass, and boom, we now have, and boom, that was an inadvertent boom. Let's hope that doesn't happen again. But suddenly we have direct flights back to Lebanon again, just in time for the war ramping up with Iran and their proxies.
So let me get this straight. We're cool. We're cool now with Lebanon. We're cool with the Saudis getting nuclear technology, uranium enrichment technology. But we're not cool with Canada because they're dealing with forest fires.
Correct.
Really?
Yep.
I mean, 50%. Number one, that'll get knocked down by another judge. I didn't think he could do that at a whim. We'll see if it actually happens. But he's declared a 50% tariff on Canada because they're dealing with forest fires, which happens every summer.
Yep. Happens in the U.S. every summer as well, by the way.
Exactly. Just the prevailing winds go that way. Yeah. So he's blaming them?
The Canadians, by the way, where these forest fires are happening, they're not even roads to get in there. So they're very difficult. It's a huge country. And I forget the exact number, but the percentage of Canadians that live within 100 miles of the U.S. border is staggering, like 85% of them or something like that. So these are areas that are giant forests, which is why all of our lumber comes from Canada, by the way. So there is no easy way to get back there and fight these forest fires. A lot of times you just have to let them kind of burn themselves out. But yeah.
But of course, he's blaming Canada for polluting America. Okay.
Yeah.
Of course, our fires generate that kind of smoke as well, but we'll ignore that.
Yeah. I had this conversation with a friend of mine who is a pretty mainstream but definitely Republican woman, and in her 80s, by the way. But I was having this conversation and had to explain to her the tourism, because she was talking about the World Cup and how it was great to have all of these foreign people over, seeing how nice America was. And I had to, and I'll get back to that in a second, but I want to mention that when I went to my last historical fiction writers conference, which was held in Las Vegas, historically that has a large number of Canadians. About 20% of the people that come are Canadians. There were only about 8 Canadians that came because they were boycotting coming to the United States and boycotting spending money in the United States because of the occupant of the White House. So by all means, let's continue stopping that tourism. World Cup, by the way, what she was talking about, I have experienced as well. I experienced it in Argentina, where I got into a discussion with a guy, and we're trying to cobble this together between my really bad Spanish and his really bad English, where his impression of the United States was everybody was just killing one another, that the violence was so bad. And that is a lot of places around the world. They look at the gun deaths, which are exponentially higher than anywhere else on the planet. Lebanon possibly excluded at the moment. But at any rate, there were people that came over for the World Cup that were kind of shocked that was not at all what the United States was like, that it was really a nice place. And
I saw a lot of great stories about hospitality and learning about the West, and it was a feel-good story.
Americans are incredibly friendly people in the United States. When you get one-on-one with Americans. Now, we don't necessarily do that well when we travel abroad, because there is a tendency to expect everybody to speak English that doesn't necessarily sit well with a lot of folks, especially Parisian waiters. But
so I've noticed,
yeah. But the U.S., we're a great country as a population, and I'm not talking about the politics here at all, but as a people, we're wonderful people, and it was terrific to have people from all over the world come in and experience that. And free refills of Diet Coke apparently is something that just mind boggles the rest of the planet.
Well, Mike, we pretty much hit the end here, and we have not talked about Cuba, which the State Department has put out a new statement. I wrote a piece about it just yesterday, as a matter of fact, talking about how terrible Cuba is. Cuba is a basket case. They can't keep the lights on. People are riding bicycles because they're out of gas for those old 50s American cars that are down there. It is a Cold War relic, and yet a lot of people are expecting they're laying the groundwork for an invasion of Cuba when we can't fund the military now because of what we spent in Iran. This is absolutely insane, and basically it's because too many left-wing people in the United States, they say, are like believers in the old Castro Revolution, which was 1958. People, I mean, you're going to war with people because some bunch of college students like them, like their philosophy. That's crazy to me.
Yeah, before I was born. Let me point that out. So,
Well,
and yeah, and I now have
I was 9.
I now have
okay.
grandchildren, but before I was born, there are people in Florida still pissed off about this. The reason Cuba is in the shape that they are in right now is because we have been starving them of oil. We have had a blockade on them throughout this administration. And it is.
Well, we boycotted Cuba for 60 years. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And when Obama tried to loosen that up even a little bit, Republicans lost their damn minds. Cuba
Well,
is a place that I have wanted to go for many years. I want to go down there and watch baseball, and had something set up to go. And I've told this story before, but I was supposed to go last December, and we couldn't go because there was an outbreak of dengue fever brought on by the fact that they didn't have the oil to run their mosquito fogging trucks. So, this administration has brought Cuba to this situation, and now they plan on going in. They're making plans and talking publicly about going in and invading them, which is just reprehensible. In
It
addition
really
to
is.
irresponsible.
A lot of this is Rubio, let's be honest, but let's also point out you don't have to like their form of government. We don't like the Chinese form of government. We don't like the Russian form of government. But it's theirs. And if that's what they want to do, fine. It does not work very well as an economy. Those that admire it are whistling past the graveyard. It's not a... I guarantee you, Mike, if we turned loose the guys from Hilton and Radisson and all the resort developers, you could make Havana another incredible tourist spot. They could make tons of money. And I've joked before that American car collectors would descend like locusts on Cuba because there are all these old 50s American cars that they've kept running. They've snapped those up. So it's an island with lots of potential. And sooner or later, maybe they'll realize that, or we'll realize that, and try to make that happen. Then you don't have to worry about them.
Yeah, Europeans and Canadians, those firebug Canadians up there, they have been allowed to go to Cuba for quite some time. And they travel there freely, and there are resorts. Now, those are in trouble because, again, they have no petroleum to bring supplies out from, whatever the suppliers are to those resorts. So they're in a horrible shape down there. Cuba was, of course, our number one tourist paradise for Americans to go to throughout the 30s and 20s actually, and 30s, 40s, and 50s, under a total despot, I might add, but
Yeah.
nonetheless,
Batista, yeah.
it was something that that was right there that Americans took advantage of all the time, and they certainly would again if we had normal relations with them. And we are not having normal relations with them because of a bunch of whiny old guys in Florida.
Yeah, well, and again, look, Batista was a despot. There's no doubt about it. He's the guy that Castro overthrew. But I quoted in my piece one Cuban American writer who said, "Havana in the '50s is what Las Vegas is today." So obviously, you remove the mob element, maybe. Well, I don't know if you can when you have that much gambling, but take Meyer Lansky and Lucky Luciano out of the picture. And you have Las Vegas in the Caribbean with a beautiful beach and historic-looking cities. It makes no sense. It makes no sense. But sure, yeah, let's invade. Why not? We have plenty of money for that, right? Okay, weird historical fact.
Yes, my weird historical fact. Oddly enough, we inadvertently tend to lead into these the last several weeks because I'm going to talk about gambling. Specifically government lotteries. And people, this is kind of a lost piece of history here, but government lotteries as a way to finance public infrastructure date back to Florence in 1530. And it went all over Europe. The British Museum and Westminster Bridge were funded by government lotteries, where people are selling. They would promise, in some cases, giving away a house, a nice house, and all these people buy tickets, and that money is funding these infrastructure projects. In the United States, this goes back to Jamestown in 1612, so 5 years after the first ill-fated ship landed at Jamestown. And by the way, I have Jamestown ancestors who probably were buying these lottery tickets, but they funded. In 1612, the Virginia Company was running these lotteries. Buildings at Princeton, Harvard, and Yale funded by lotteries. Faneuil Hall in Boston had burned down. It was rebuilt in 1761 by a lottery. So this is something that is a total forgotten piece of history, but that is how colonial America, in a lot of cases, was built. They would get the money, and in the South, of course, they would just have the slaves do the work. So why did this end? Why did this end, Roger? I'll give you one guess on the state that brought all this to an end, a crashing end. Louisiana. Yes, of course it is. Louisiana, which I did a whole Prick the Balloon episode, by the way, about which state is the most corrupt. And Texas and Illinois are the good, solid runners-up. New Jersey, second tier. Louisiana, most corrupt state in the United States. And there's all kinds of wonderful history things. But Louisiana started selling by mail a nationwide lottery ticket. We're talking about here in the 1870s and 1880s. And there was such kickbacks, all of these people that were stealing money from the Louisiana government. We're talking in the 1880s, the state treasurer ran off to Honduras with $1 million. So that's 1880. So we're talking, a few hundred.
That's a lot of money back. A lot of money now, but a lot of money back then.
Took off to Honduras. So this brought about some anti-lottery politicians. That was actually a platform plank. And Benjamin Harrison banned lottery by mail in 1890. So Louisiana ruined it for everybody.
Of course. But of course, it's their job. Yeah. Michael, we're out of time. We're over time. Thank you, sir, so much. And thank all of you. Click like and all that stuff. You can find our podcast anywhere, pretty much. Audio or video. We have both. And hopefully we will see you guys next time for another fine mess.
Another fine mess.